talking about the business of stomachs, we're talking about maize, we're talking about wheat, we're talking about soybean. And I've just been told by Chris that while everyone's on holiday, the maize prices were going all sorts of places, and there was a peak, and the farmers were not there to take advantage. Unfortunately, the rains have been good. Chris, fill us in. I mean, how does it happen that prices spike when the people who want to benefit from them are not around?
Well, it all depends. Perhaps there were some farmers out there who didn't take a holiday and
took a chance and
looking at the markets
milked it
carefully. So I think because we live in an environment where there's electronic markets, you know, you can access these markets via the internet. You could have a quick peek at the markets before they close at 12, before you hit the beach for your holiday, and perhaps there were a couple of farmers who took advantage.
Sure, let's just give this context. We're talking about maize prices, and we saw a big spike in December. In fact, maize prices rose to a record in December. That's for the March contract.
Quite right, Godfrey. On the 18th of December, that's where we've seen the all-time high for the March 2010 contract on the white maize, where we hit a level of 1726, 1,726 Rand a tonne. Since then, and unfortunately on the 4th of Jan, look, that is also on the back of some thin trade, being the holiday season, but as more and more players have come back to the market, fundamentals have come through in the market. We've also seen good rainfalls across the maize growing area. So favourable growing conditions have had a negative impact on prices, and that's where we've seen this fall. At the moment, we're trading at 1582. That's a drop of 144 Rand a tonne over a short space of time.
Absolutely. What are we to read into these prices? Should we be extrapolating this and saying perhaps in 2010 we could potentially be looking at lower food prices? Certainly.
The crop is looking favourable. The first estimate will come out 23rd of February. That's the Crop Estimates Committee will provide their first estimate of what we can expect. So yeah, I would certainly say at this point in time with the good rains, we are looking at a favourable crop size, which means, yeah, surplus crop again for South Africans. Very fortunate.
And we've got to add on top of that a very, very strong rand, because some people are talking about the rand perhaps rising as strong as 7.25 against the US dollar, which would suggest again pressure on prices, and that means lower food prices, and that should mean lower inflation going forward, and potentially a red cut for everybody.
Great news for the consumer. Great news for the consumer. I agree 100%. I think if you look from the producer's point of view, obviously,
they are screaming.
They're not going to be very happy at this. I think you need to look back and say, thank goodness the producer has a futures market in their own country, and there have been opportunities where they could have locked in some of their crop. You know, no producer is going to lock in everything, but there certainly has been opportunities through the course of the year to lock in prices. And that leads, you know, if you go and look at the July 2010 crop, July is the core harvest period for South Africans, and we've seen the market moving between this, you know, the 1,500 and 1,700 band, and at the moment, yeah, we're on the lower side of that for farmers to hedge if they haven't hedged anything at all.
For sure. I was listening to TV the other day, and of course, like everyone else these days, there's been this big story about the big freeze in the US, the big freeze in the UK, and potentially that affecting food production. We have not seen this filter through into the prices, have we yet?
No, I would say we have seen some impact on the harvest period in the US. So the corn guys have had a challenging harvesting season with that cold weather. But yeah, I think that does add to some of the volatility. But you see in the US, a lot of the funds want to buy into commodities, and therefore they are also helping support that corn market.
Sure. The other big movement we've seen in soft commodities prices is on the soybean and sunflower front. Now, you were telling me we are seeing a big decline in there. Is there any specific reason why they should be so?
Look, the soybean market in South Africa is still generally very small compared to international markets, and therefore it's going to follow the international trend. And we have seen a big fall off on the international markets. The growing conditions have been very favourable in South America, which are large producers of soybeans. And therefore, yeah, we've seen that big fall of just over 200 Rand a tonne in the local markets.
Right. So potentially, again, we're looking at lower food costs here going forward.
Yeah, you think your soybeans going into animal feed, yeah, if lower animal feed costs should pass on, beef and chicken should become cheaper.
Economists are certainly listening to this, because potentially we could be looking at perhaps better than inflation, better than expected inflation figures here, because all these things had not been in the market when people went away in December. These are all new factors that are coming in.
Definitely. Look, it's only taken place over the last week and a half.
Exactly.
You know, we have to look back and say what can turn things around. Yes,
Yeah.
if there's a change in the rand dollar
Sure.
exchange rate.
Sure.
But we have seen good rains and would need extreme heat to really see any downward pressure or any pressure on the actual harvest.
I've been told I must wrap, but two more things. We've got today a big report coming out of the USDA. They are coming up with their corn exports. Any big surprises expected out of that?
I think the industry, you know, worldwide will be looking at those markets, South African time, but later. And as far as soybean goes, I think everyone expects a high estimate there. On the corn side, I think traders are a bit uneasy because of that ice damage. They're not too sure. It could go either way.